Hi everybody, we're back with our daisy painting. Now, we'll just excuse the noise a little bit because I want to talk to you about drying. So when you use a lot of masking fluid, it sometimes is bulged because the paper gets so wet. So I'm going to not only dry the front, but I'm also going to dry the back. Now I've dried it quite a bit already to save us some time, but it should take at least, a good 10 minutes or so to dry that. What you want to do is get the paper to look like it is as flat as possible. Still a little bit bulged, but I think I can live with that. And I tape it down again, and I'm going to be ready to paint. Now, let's do some planning in our heads so that we have an idea of where the color is going to go. So if we look at our image, we see that there is different colors in different areas. So I want to mark that down, and I want dark brown here. I want some gray blue up here. I want some greens next to my brown there. And then in here, it looks like there's kind of a rosy color. So rosy burnt sienna. So I'm going to say burnt sienna rose combination there. And this is very, very dark. So I put DD for dark darks. So then I have a gray corner, a dark corner, a very dark brown corner with green, and some nice rosy burnt sienna. That really gives me a good idea of where I'm going to put my colors because I'm planning ahead a little bit. I'm just going to move this a little bit so I don't get paint on it, and you can just see what I'm going to be doing here. Now, here's our palette once again, and you'll notice while we're doing all that, it's dried out. So I'm just going to take my spritz bottle and I'm going to spritz a little bit. I'm going to double check to see that I look like I have lots of paint. Not a very big paper, but the more you apply, the more it's going to go darker for you, and really don't want to run out of paint halfway through the process. Now, do we pre-wet the paper? Yes, you should, just a little bit. And I just spritz it. I don't do a lot of brush work on it because as I'm applying the blues and the grays in here, it is mixing into the water that I've already put down there. So, that said, grays and gray blue. I also see that on my picture. Then it comes around here, make sure that's wet, and it says dark brown. I'm going right over top of my masking fluid. And it said what was next to it on my paper, it says green. So then I know I need to put some green in here. Now I don't want this to look like it's bunches of color. I want them to mingle. So that the good time to do that is to move your border. Hope I'm not making you dizzy. So you're going to move it around to get that to flow. Now this corner, I've forgotten what I was going to do, so thank goodness I have my notes here that say dark darks. Well, that certainly is going to look very nice against the nice white flower. And what's down in here? Well, that's where the rich burnt sienna was, and that was burnt sienna with rose in it. There's that nice color. And we have our whole background covered. It's quite a mess, so I like to clean all this excess water off. And then I look for big puddles on top of the masking fluid. We don't want that running into our image. So get rid of those puddles only on the masking fluid. Oh, what's this? I'm not sure, but I missed that spot. So I'm just going to put some color in. Now this is still wet, so I can do all kinds of things to it. I'm going to change to a round brush, and I'm going to think to myself, what colors do I think I want in this picture that didn't show up yet? So I see that I think I want some green in here, and I know from my color sample that I mixed my green with blue and yellow. Now I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to tap it. And if I use lots of yellow in my green, I'm going to get little bits of limey green sparkle. Let's see if you can see that close up. There's a little bit of limey green there. Okay, so we got some nice colors in the background. In our picture, I see little red buttons of color. So I'm going to take some rose and I'm going to splash some rose in here so that we have rose also in our foliage at the back. Nice little bit of green. I see that I dried this edge too much. Just going to re-wet that edge. Now, whatever other colors do I see in here? There is other leaves and things in the background. I think it's a pretty good background. Now let's think about dark. Is it dark enough that's going to be against the white? And it looks like this white next to the dark is going to show up quite nicely. But remember that watercolors dry lighter. So I want to make sure that my darks are very, very dark. And so instead of painting the whole thing over again, I would splash in some extra dark purple. You can see it here. And it's created a really nice background pattern. I think I want a little extra yellow for sunshine because the other stuff mingled a little bit. And I want some extra blue in the sky so I can splash that blue in, and it gives me a little bit of a bluer sky because it's mingling into the damp paper. And you can see that it's created all kinds of really interesting stuff in the background without me painting specific leaves. Now, the last thing I do to give myself an idea of whether this is dark enough is I like to take the tape off. Always pull away from your picture. If you pull towards your picture, it can grab an edge and rip a hole in your paper. So always try to pull that away. This gives a nice white image around the painting and gives me an idea what this painting is going to look like with the white flower in it. So that is almost ready. The next thing would be to dry it. Now, if you're going to use a hair dryer, be careful that you don't have big puddles of water on your masking fluid because it'll blow it into your background and might make a streak. Now, when you dry it, I want you to dry the front until the shine's all gone, and then flip it over and dry the back so that it gets really nice and flat until it comes to a very flat image that we're going to be ready to paint on. Okay, now we're ready. We've got it dried. We've dried it front and back. It's nice and flat. It's nice and crisp. The next thing to do is tape it back down. It helps if you tape it back down when you're pulling the masking fluid off, because you're really pulling it off and it bounces the paper around. I like to have control, so I'm going to tape that back down. Now, you can use a homemade masking ball, or you can buy a Crafter Square. It says glue and residue eraser. These are almost like an old crepe sole, and it's basically the same as this. Now you can use this, and this works. You pull it off, or you can make your own. And how I make that is I use a piece of masking tape to start pulling this up, and then I can roll this into a ball, which makes it look like this once you're done getting it all rolled up. Now you want to pull this carefully, make sure your background's very dry so that you're not smudging paint into your image. Feel it to make sure there's nothing left on there, and then continue. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is our drawing once we've got all and this is where the bottom line connects to the top line. So we're just going to go back in here and draw our petals in, and you can use your image to figure out where they're overlapping. And sometimes you say, what the heck did I draw there? So it helps to have your connecting lines down here to know you go from this up to there. And I'm just going to redraw this whole thing lightly with a pencil so that I can go in there and define my petals. And I almost said, what the heck? Oh my gosh! I missed a spot right here. So I want to fix that before I go any further. And I want to grab a brush that is a oil painting old stiff brush, and I'm going to scrub this little area that I forgot to mask so that I can create this little edge. Now you notice that I cannot get back to perfectly clean paper, but I get pretty darn close, and that will be all right. There'll be a little bit of a shadow there. So that's fixed. I don't have to think about that anymore, but I know that that's the back. And then in here, my graphite, you'll notice, still shows up. So that's the advantage of having drawn with graphite, that sometimes it will show up for you, and it's not any darker than what this is. Now these leaves, I invented them, and so I'm going to go in and I'm going to say this is overlapping that, this one is here, and I'm just continuing these lines just like I did on the petals so that I know where the leaves are overlapping each other. And now we will be ready to paint this image. In our next video, we will decide on the colors we need for the flower and continue on with our little program. So thank you for watching. Talk to you soon.